Oh hey, I'm glad you're here. As I mentioned, growing up in a video store, I witnessed amazing moments in customer service. Like people not understanding the tag system, and instead bringing the VHS box to the register, and when told that if there isn't a tag, that means there's no movie, how 100% of the times they'd reply, well, the box is here, and then show you the box, as if there was confusion as to what the movie had come in eventually to the store, that we could then help them. Like, oh, the box, and you want the other part of the. Got it, yeah, no problem. And I told you about the man who returned his VCR because it wouldn't play in color on his black and white TV. True story. Jobs that involve customer service provide a view at a wide swath of humans, for better or worse. I've done call centers to giving out food samples. At the latter, I had a sauce out to sample that had jalapeno in it. And a woman tried it, was reading the card, and said, "What's a jalapenos?" To which I honestly replied, "I don't know." And just yesterday, I was having internet issues, so I eventually had to call. And eventually got a person. A person who could only read the prompt messages on their screen. So he said, "How's it going?" And I said, "Good." Because it's not his fault that I know of. So he says, "Okay, ma'am. Now, I get ma'am a lot on the phone. I don't know if I'm a soft-spoken, courteous individual. It doesn't offend me. That's fine." And after 4 more ma'ams, he's prompted to ask if he can call me by my first name. Like at this point, we're definitely chummy. We're good friends. So I say Dirk, and after a long pause, he returns with, "Okay, ma'am, let's see if we can solve that issue." And I commend him on sticking to his ma'am guns, which does sound like a euphemism. But my favorite part is what came next. He said, "How's your day going?" And I said, "Well, it's 8 a.m., so it's just getting started." And he came right back with, "Did you have your coffee?" And after a long pause, I thought, did I call Starbucks to fix my internet? I mean, I might as well have, because I ended up solving the issue myself. My point is, the episode is dedicated to anyone who works with the public. On top of the skill set you need to do your job, you also have to navigate a myriad of people with a wide variety of ways to communicate. So, without further ado, the film is Intruder, my guest is a grocery manager, and this is VHS. Hello, and welcome to VHS, the podcast where each episode is about a film and the guest has the profession portrayed in the film. As always, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at VHUS_podcast. Our website is VH-US.com, and feel free to share your thoughts and experiences with me. Who am I? Well, I'm your host, Dirk Marshall, and I'm joined in the studio by Jesse Kaszniak, who is a grocery manager. Thank you for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. And if you decide, you can refer to me as Captain Supermarket, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Okay, great. Captain Supermarket's here. We've known each other for a long time, which is not normally the case for episodes of VHS. I'm not sure who introduced us, but I do know that I met you at a time when I had left home and I was beginning my hunt for people like me, outsiders, weirdos, people that liked cult cinema, experimental music. And when I met you, it was like I finally knew someone who understand what buying a one-sided 12-inch of a band that celebrates the spring equinox that is borderline unlistenable. And that was you.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes, we both had similar interests, but we're not brought together today by a 27-minute noise cassette sold in a wooden box full of bee wings. We're brought together by the film Intruder. Now we both want to buy that though. That's the problem. We're both like,
I'm already pre-purchasing it as we speak. Yeah.
Is that on Soleil Moon or where do I? Now I know this wasn't a first-time watch for you.
It was not, but it was the first time in a very long time, and
great.
It was a total joy to revisit it. Yeah.
So the film is Intruder. The way I found my way to this film is, in the 80s, 90s, mom and pop video stores or gas stations would eventually sell, sadly, being taken over by the big kids. And so then they would sell their lot of films to other stores. And Intruder was one of the ones that our mom and pop shop got. And I looked at this thing with the terrible cover art and I was like, what is this? And then I saw a name on it and I was like, Sam Raimi, like what? And so I watched it. And, it's butchered, these VHS versions. They cut all the gore out. But there's still something magical, I feel like, in every moment of this film. And so I thought it was great. And then it wasn't until years later that I saw it as you're supposed to see it. And the version I have now is the Synapse one, the Blu-ray.
The unedited one, right, which is what I just recently viewed, and
Oh my gosh, gorgeous.
has all the glorious gore, which is so technicolor and beautiful in this
yes,
particular one.
yes, it's so great. And I listened to the commentary, and you can hear them shocked at how good the film looks. And I just love that. I love these companies that are doing that for these directors whose films just got so misrepresented, like the intentions, the creations, they just cast aside. Now, this is a horror film, and I personally can't think of anything more horrific than samples or the hot bar in a grocery store. And I can't imagine that you don't have some horror stories from working in an environment with these things.
Oh gosh, I've got so many horror stories, and especially I don't work nights all the time, but I just came off working a night crew shift for our inventory process, and it really brought me back in the mindset of my crew that I have a night crew that's full-time overnight there, and the stories they tell me and some of the things I've dealt with over the years in terms of let's just say mental health crises are pretty amazing. Probably one of the stranger things that I encountered with a night crew member was someone came to me very concerned and said, you really need to check in with this night crew member because I think he's having some paranoid fantasies. And I said, oh, that's disconcerting. There's 3 people at night in this abandoned building with box knives. That can't be good. Yeah. And it turned out that in fact he was convinced that one of the other night crew members was a demon.
Oh no.
And was planning to kill him. And he had taken notes, and he presented me with this like page of chicken scratch notes of all the times that she revealed her true nature as being this satanic entity, and why he felt he might need to take some violent action upon her. So that was a mandatory EAP, which is our employee assistance program, mental health intervention at that time. But
I'm glad that sort of thing exists, though.
It needs to. It turns out.
You don't want to just cast people out into the street with that sort of thing going on.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking you were going to say somebody not using the toothpick at one of those free cheese stations, but that's a far better story.
Horrifying in itself, in the pandemic, it's been, so many noses hanging out below the mask. But
yes.
There's been far more horrific.
Pre-pandemic, one of my favorite things to do would be like, if I was at a Fred Meyer buying beer or something, I would see where the free cookies were in the bakery section, and just give yourself a minute, and you'll never eat those cookies ever again. Just like watching people just put their bare hand in there and just finger cookies out of the way until they find the one they want. It's just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. No thanks. So maybe some good from the pandemic is those things will go away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, controlling people in a way to make them safer turns out works pretty well,
and less disgusting.
Yes, exactly. Well, my first time viewing this film was similar, also on VHS, and I had worked at a video store in Eugene, Oregon, where I met you, and it's called Silver Star Video and Tanning. And this was one of the movies that we had in our selection, and that was a surreal job in itself, because we had both family video and a lot of adult films in a little back area as well. And tanning. So we really had every demographic you could ever want and not want coming in the door.
Right.
And the worst was when the demographics blended over, and you had someone renting porn, renting a Disney movie, and jumping in the tanning bed. I mean, no one wants that.
No, I don't want that. I always thought that was a weird combination until I think about how pale I am and how many movies I watch, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess tanning would probably be a healthy choice.
Would have helped us all. Yeah, all of us VHS geeks. It would have really helped. Yeah.
So we met at that video store?
We didn't meet at that video store, but we met during the time when I was working there. Okay. Yeah, so that was that era of time, and what really got me into VHS collecting and really horror film in general, and especially kind of the forgotten gems like this one. And I have some notions kind of why it was forgotten too, that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Okay,
why
great.
It didn't get celebrated as much as it should have,
Yeah, exactly. The synopsis for the film is: the overnight stock crew of a local supermarket finds themselves being stalked and slashed by a mysterious maniac. At the time of this recording, you could rent the film at your local movie store, like Movie Madness here in Portland, Oregon, or buy the Blu-ray from Synapse, or I guess you could stream it. I didn't check. But
you can stream it for free on a weird site that has lots of ads.
Okay, great. Don't do that.
Yeah, legally,
right.
I
Okay.
I do clarify.
Let's put the film in context. Our director is Scott Spiegel, who did a ton of shorts: Intruder in '89, Dusk Till Dawn 2, Hostel 3, and co-directed Spring Break '83, which is coming out soon, with Lee Majors, Eric Estrada, and Morgan Fairchild among the cast, which sounds interesting. Yeah. Scott also is the co-writer of Evil Dead 2, for people that needed more credentials for the fellow. Our cinematographer is Fernando Arguelles. I'm sure I'm murdering that. I apologize. Did an Intruder, 9.5 Ninjas, and a lot of TV, including Hemlock Grove. Our editor is King Wilder, that's a great name. Did Ghost Town, Intruder, Cannibal Woman in the Avocado Jungle of Death, Night Game, Deadly Weapon. Definitely came from, I think, the Charles Band camp. Our makeup effects team, you got to mention, because you got Howard Berger, Robert Kurtzman, Greg Nicotero, and Sean Rogers. During the day of this film, they were working on the special effects for Deep Star 6, and during the night, they were working on Intruder, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, that is awesome.
Being 20, 23 or somewhere around there, and just like not sleeping, just working all the time on something that you love. Our actors are Elizabeth Cox. She's from Night of the Creeps, The Wraith, and Intruder, to name a few of hers. Renee Estevez, who did Sleepaway Camp 2, Intruder, Heathers, and she did a ton of West Wing. And then Dan Hicks, Evil Dead 2, Maniac Cop, Intruder, Wishmaster, Spider-Man 2, and still going to this day, which is pretty impressive. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
The entire movie is shot on 35 millimeter short ends, which is pretty amazing. However, the original was an 8 millimeter short film called Night Crew, and Bruce Campbell was the cameraman, I guess. It was originally, this film was called The Night Crew, and the tagline is The Final Checkout, which I love that, but
brilliant.
The company changed, the production company, I think, changed the name. Or the guys had Evil Dead in the can at the time of this, and they wanted to make Night Crew, but things picked up, speeding towards Evil Dead 2, I think. And then 2 years later, Lawrence Bender said, Scott, what do you got that we could do cheap? And he said, oh, I got Night Crew. And he's like, great, let's do it. Then Charles Band got involved from Empire Videos, but the release was juggled from one company to Paramount's direct-to-video, heavily edited, like we said, with a horrible cover, which tells you who the killer is, which is like, what?
It's got the spoiler, and one, that's something actually comes up why I think this film wasn't as successful.
Yeah.
Not just that cover, but you have the red herring of the the scorned boyfriend immediately overemphasized and like rubbed in your face the entire time. It's one of the few flaws I think in this movie. From the first scene you see him, you're like, oh, okay, they're going to set this up as the fake killer.
It's but by putting Bill on the cover or whatever, it's like, he's not I love his performance in the film, but if you're like, well, that's the killer, like, it just doesn't, that's the great part about him for the reveal, and then I don't know, he's
not the sexy, charismatic, or even terrifying looking killer you would put on a piece of cover art normally.
Exactly. He's no Judd Nelson, shall we say.
He's I'm totally forgetting the gentleman from Maniac Cop that has the wild features.
Robert Zadar.
Thank you.
Check this out. I just got this. Did you know there's a sequel to Hell Comes to Frogtown?
I did not.
It's called Frogtown 2, and if you look, it stars
there he is.
Robert Zadar instead of Roddy Piper. So
it's a perfect stand-in.
And in finding that, I discovered there's the third one. So I got that coming on the way. Don't tell my wife where all of our money's going.
Right. Well, don't tell mine. Well, she knows because I'm out in the garage full of it. So
that's excellent. Quentin Tarantino told Scotty, the director, at the time of this, that he should just go around and rent his own movie from the video store and re-record the unedited one onto the edited tapes. And Scotty doesn't say if he did that or not, but he looks like he may have in fact done that at the time. And then also Scotty introduced Quentin to Lawrence Bender, who then became the big producer for Quentin Tarantino. And this film also started because Greg Nicotero and those guys were all coming from Evil Dead 2, working from Mark Shostrom, started K&B Effects Company. This all happened because of Intruder. So while it is this film that like doesn't get the love it deserves. It's incredibly important when you talk about these things,
Yeah, it would sound like an amazing networking opportunity and nothing else. And
Yes,
yeah, it holds up. Yeah.
I agree. All right, so let's press play on Intruder. We begin with a shot of a full moon in the title card. Spooky music plays as we get the credits right up front. All the music was free library music. They had nothing in the budget, so that's where that went. And then we drop down and see the grocery store. About $1,000 got them 2-ton trucks full of damaged but still okay food, and that's what they stocked the shelves in the supermarket with. It's real food. A lot of it rotted during the time that they were shooting the film. One aisle of dog food, I guess, was really awful smelling, so they tried to avoid that at all times. You'll also notice that you don't see produce because they didn't have produce in this warehouse where they acquired everything, so they're staying right in the middle of the grocery store for this. We see employees and we get a shot inside a shopping cart looking out. It's the first POV shot where for me, I love that stuff, and I just went, oh yeah, that's right, I love this. And we hear a voice over the intercom.
Good evening, Walnut Lake shoppers. The store will be closing in 15 minutes, so please make your final selection and bring them to the front of the store, and our cashier will be happy to check you out. Thank you for shopping at Walnut Lake Market.
I gotta think you have some intercom stories. Anything happening or going wrong when someone's there making an announcement
and it going terribly wrong? Let's think. This is almost more of just an annoyance, but a funny story where I
Yes.
had a coworker who was, as many people in the grocery industry are, they had this beautiful dreams of being someone else before they got there.
Sure.
The retail work is somewhere that you don't really plan on staying in, and you don't really plan on arriving in, but you somehow get there.
Yes.
And this gentleman was a mime by luck. Like if he were left to his own devices, he would have been a professional mime. And he had studied at the Comedy dell'arte Academy. He had met Marcel Marceau. He was very serious about this, but all of his pages were a over-the-top vaudevillian clown from the 1920s sort of thing, and he mispronounced everything.
Oh,
and
no.
So when we would sample baguettes in one of the aisles, he would always say, yeah, on aisle 3 we have fresh crusted baguettes. And as far as other things that would happen with the overhead pages, it's more that you forget it's on or leave it on by mistake. And start telling a story of about supervisor and how you really feel about them. So it's just error for that. Yes.
I knew a guy once who worked at a home improvement store who found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him and decided that over the intercom was a great time to express his feelings.
Oh, dear God.
Yes. He was not given the mental health help support that your person received, but he doesn't work there anymore.
Yeah?
Steve asked you out yet?
No, he's still seeing Carrie.
I heard they broke up.
Am I interrupting something?
No.
Oh, I thought,
No.
I could hear everything. Don't realize.
Two girls chat as an old man, Emil Sitka, is waiting. Emil is the fourth Stooge, considered by many. He participated in all of the Three Stooges stuff involving all the different lineups. Also, he's in a scene. There's a scene from A Brideless Groom from 1947, which appears in Pulp Fiction before the adrenaline heart stab, where he says a line about lovebirds holding hands, a line that he reprises in Intruder. So it's a lineage from Intruder to the Three Stooges and through Pulp Fiction. Yeah, I also heard a story that because of that scene being in Pulp Fiction, he receives a credit, he does, but he receives a check, and that sort of re-kicked up his what's it called, the Screen Actors Guild, and so he was eligible for healthcare at a point in his elderly years where it was very serious. So it's pretty awesome that that's just a random. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Outside, a girl fumbles with a cart while a mysterious man watches on, and we know he's mysterious because of an evil bass note that plays super loud from a synthesizer.
It sure does, yes.
Yeah. We find out it's Craig, her boyfriend.
Long time no see.
Craig,
How come you haven't returned my calls?
I haven't checked my answering machine in 2 days.
You're like, I really can believe that. You know, I got a gimp hand from writing you letter after letter, just hoping you'd write one back to me.
Craig, this is no time.
When is a good time, Jennifer, huh? A year from now, maybe 2?
He creates quite a scene at the register, something I'm sure you have to have seen people at the register.
It's causing a scene, absolutely. And in fact, in a similar fashion, a scorned ex coming in and making a scene
Oh no.
with someone working there. So oddly enough, it was the same gentleman who drove me crazy with the pages,
No.
the mime. So he had a ex-girlfriend that he had broken it off with rather poorly. And they were both, you know, varying levels of mentally ill, it seemed to me. And she arrived in the middle of summer one day, topless, into the store, and proceeded to approach him and try to choke him out at the register.
Oh dear.
Because she thought that was the way that she should confront him about what had gone down. So
Wow. That
there we go. You know.
that is rough. Clearly people were something pre-pandemic, but did you notice a change after the pandemic started, or was it just pretty much even keel? People have always been quite questionable.
So in terms of customers, the particular grocery store I work for really emphasizes customer service to the point of, like, we bend over backwards to an absurd degree. And I've often joked that we've actually bred a new kind of human that is this de-evolved, unself-sufficient person that believes they can find, you know, the meaning of life, spiritual fulfillment, and every possible culinary recipe by going in a grocery store. So we already had this like bizarre entitled clientele, and then you add on the stress and necessary safety precautions of a pandemic. So in terms of customers, it's gotten, you know, very surreal. And just always feeling like on the edge of something terrible happening.
Well, because also one of your job is one of the few that didn't at least stop for some period. Like many people just right back to working at home, but you were there where there was like lines outside and people could have one pack of toilet paper, a family or whatever. It's like, you didn't get a break.
Not
like,
at all.
A lot of people are just sitting at home like, I don't know what we're doing. But you're just like, I'm doing the same thing, but everything else has changed around me.
Yes. And that was a surreal place to be in, and it still is. But the staff have been able to kind of roll with it for the most part. We have our moments. And, you know, I can think of like with the paper shortage, it was particularly funny because we did have these signs up about, you know, 2 per customer when we were having the great paper shortage of 2020.
Yes, a year ago.
And I remember vividly a woman coming in and looking at me dead in the face as I was stocking what little toilet paper we had, the 2 cases we were able to get in the past 10 weeks or something. And going, I'm going to get more than 2 because, you know, I have teenage boys at home. And I said, oh, we all have people at home for now.
Yeah. I love that story.
So that's the kind of customer service one is driven to in these times, I
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like it. It's like just enough to let the person know, like, yeah. Well, this guy, he assaults the lady, and it's not cool.
You're crazy!
Call me that.
Luckily, Sam Raimi shows up and gets thrown into a display. He actually got injured because those were full cans of Pepsi that are falling on him. And then the guy's loose in the store. No one knows where he is. One guy pauses with his search to eat some cookies in the aisles. How often do you find just opened food in the store?
Oh, constantly. And it's always put in weird places.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, surely you weren't eating ladyfingers cookies in the feminine hygiene section. I mean, that's too easy of a setup. You weren't really doing that, weren't you? Like,
it sounds like a Gilbert Gottfried joke or something.
I think I just ripped him off. Yeah. So.
Oh no.
But yeah, and you find things just like, and for me, it's always like trying to recreate the low-level crime scene of it all. Of like, surely you weren't. And in the bathrooms is where you find a lot of the snacking and a lot of very mysterious things left behind.
Yeah, we'll get to bathrooms in a moment. Sam enters a place full of hanging meat. Most stores don't have on-site butchers anymore. Is that right?
That is absolutely right. And the atmosphere of all those pieces of meat hanging on the hooks is so great for a movie like this. And we do have a brutal bandsaw, which is featured later, where we get the sound of bone being cut randomly with no warning throughout the day. So we've got that going for us. But in terms of we're in a different era. I'd worked at a Polish sausage deli in Chicago during the summers when I was a teenager, and there was a walk-in that really resembled that, where it was full chunks of animals hanging up in not very sanitary conditions.
Yes. Yeah, this was real meat that hung in there for 2 weeks, so you can imagine what happened in that room. In fact, on the Synapse release, they made a little making of featurette, which looks amazing, and that's where they talk about this meat and also the story I mentioned earlier about the dog food rotting. They really paint a great picture, but they get most people to come back, so it's great.
It's like a premature ejaculation show.
Yes.
Tale of what Roz Williams used to do at those shows.
That's so true. And for people that don't know, that's a band.
That's a band. Not part of my lifestyle.
Right. One guy searches the bathroom. And from the look on his face, it's a nightmare. Your store has a public bathroom. Well, let's talk about things you've seen there.
Oh, so your editor can do what he decides on this, but I'm happy.
Okay, great.
The darkness.
I'll throw one out there. I worked at a clothing store, and in the fitting rooms on the regular, you would find either used tampons just stuck behind mirrors or thrown under the bench, or people that had accidents in their underwear, and they would just stuff that behind the mirror or under the bench. There wasn't a lot of hiding places, so you knew where to look. But and it was always in a nest of the security tags that people had taken off clothes. So it's just like it's pretty great.
That is great. So a number of years ago, one of our service managers, which is a role that sort of handles like operational procedures in the store, customer service interaction with people are pissed, and then also does hazmat cleanup, for lack of a better word. Anytime there's biohazard in the bathrooms, they're called in. Okay. And it's a role in the store I've avoided for that very reason. And one of my friends approached me so hollow-eyed and terrified, and I was like, what's going on? What's happening? And he's like, did you hear that page that I was called to the bathroom? Yeah, I did. Well, and he was shaking, and I was like, I don't know if I want to hear it.
Yeah.
No, you probably do. And he's like, I walk in, there's a toilet plunger sitting on top of the toilet.
Oh.
And on the handle of the toilet plunger is a condom.
Yeah.
And it is covered in blood and fecal matter. And, then, dead silence of like, I don't know what to say. Is this guy in a state of trauma? I'd love to make some bad jokes about this. Like it's just a setup for nothing good.
Yeah.
And what it ended up resulting in was an ongoing joke and a teasing thing where we took a not that seam that plunger was definitely like thrown away and burned and smudged with sage, but we took a brand new toilet plunger, spray painted it in gold, and presented him the hazmat award. And then that actually ended up for several years being passed between people when they found various levels of other horrific things in the bathrooms. So.
That's excellent. That's really good. I one time found a thong back in the bowl of thongs, which I don't think is the proper way to display thongs in the first place, but that actually
I'm trying to
had,
picture this.
yeah, it actually had balls of fecal matter on it. And
Oh.
I just couldn't figure out what I was looking at. It was just terrifying.
Mhm.
And they were like, take that pear and throw it out. And I'm like, what about the rest of the bowl of thongs? So like, this is madness. And they were like, they're like, well, when you say it that way, yeah, we'll have to damage those out too. There was another time, and then we'll move on because this isn't about clothing, but where a couple was having sex in the men's fitting room in a store I worked at in Seattle, and then they just used the store's clothing to clean themselves off afterwards and just left that in the fitting room for us.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait.
Also damaged out.
Craig? Craig Peterson. Craig Peterson? Hey, I remember him. One time he got into this fight, and I kicked his ass.
Yeah, we just got in a big fight from up front at the store. Oh. He's in here somewhere. So if you see him, keep your eyes peeled.
Well, Ted Raimi slides into the movie and is informed that Craig is on site. So Tim reaches out for a coworker, and everyone calls Tim a dick. I don't know why everyone hates Tim in this movie, but they all just think he's a prick.
Yeah, he's the whipping boy in this, and it's kind of sad. You know.
Yeah.
Hey, what happened? Did you see him? Did you see him?
No, it's just Tim scaring me.
You were such a dick, Tim.
Jackass,
No,
hey,
it's so typical of you, Tim.
They set off to check the attic, but the ladder breaks and Bill falls, but he's all right. Jennifer tries to call the cops, but Craig finds out, demands his change for the cigarettes.
Now give me my change.
Are you kidding?
Does it look like I'm kidding?
Which is a weird move. Then everyone grabs him and throws him out. And one of my favorite lines in the film, Sam Raimi yells, "Go the fuck off."
Go the fuck off! Beat it.
He does. That is very awkward.
It's so weird. Like I had to rewind it and be like, why didn't I catch that the first time I watched this? I don't even know if it's in the edited one, but it's such a weird line. But it's another great example of how carefully every single shot is planned. There's always reflections in things, and these are all real shots. There's no CG or anything. So everyone's face on a blade, everybody reflected in glass. It's just such a well-constructed film, and you can feel like everyone involved really cared about the thing that they're making, which differs from a lot of movies where they only have 2 weeks to shoot it.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel it's like the ultimate working class slasher, both where it's set, it's set in this retail environment, but it's got this like working class ethos of like, we're all going to work hard. We take this way more serious than we should, given what we're doing.
Right.
Like there's a sense of, attention to detail and artistry, which you wouldn't expect in this. And also kind of a little bit of a desperation that comes with,
we got to get it.
Working class in America.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They have a little meeting, and now seems like a good time to let them know that they're going to close next month. They'll all be fired.
Well, I think we have enough excitement for one night.
Yeah. Danny and I want to congratulate y'all on the way you handled this situation this evening. Y'all did a fine job.
Does this mean we get a raise?
Unfortunately, no. As a matter of fact, tonight we start marking down everything in the store half price.
Why?
Bill and I are selling the store.
What?
Oh.
Now, calm down, everybody.
In this scene, one guy goes, "There goes my 3 years of seniority," which I like that. And Dan Hicks, aka Bill, says he worked his way up from the butcher. So we know where Bill kind of got his start in the grocery store, but we don't know yours. So how did you start your path to becoming a grocery manager?
A grocery manager, and I should say, I mentioned earlier calling me Captain Supermarket, and that was something that recently came to me. I was looking over posts of VHS covers from various countries, and Army of Darkness, when it was released in Japan, was released under the title Captain Supermarket, and starring Bruce Campbell, who was really hyped to be starring in this film, and as we'll talk about later, is barely in the movie. But so in terms of how I got to start at it, it was really having to do a little bit with moving to a town where it was really hard to find a job. And so I graduated with a philosophy degree, which most philosophers will tell you leads to either supermarket employment or homelessness. And so that, you know, I chose that, and rather than going back to school, and got a job as a perishable grocery assistant manager. And then I lucked out that my manager was interested in our pharmacy department, and months later I was moved into her shoes and then kind of moved up in the company. But it was really a result of not knowing what to do with myself. And the September 11th Twin Towers incident had happened the moment I moved to Portland. Literally, I was in an apartment and unpacking my stuff, and I turned on our little black and white travel TV that we had with us, and that was going on. And I said, "Oh dear God, it's going to be impossible to find a job. I'm going to take anything I can find." And actually, that's right. I was hired as a bag boy, and then immediately moved into this leadership role. But initially, I was bagging groceries.
Wow.
With a fresh philosophy degree.
That's amazing. Oh no, evil base note, as we see someone's POV heading towards the store. Jennifer answers the phone even though they're closed, which is odd. And it's Craig. Jennifer and the other girls share the backstory of Craig, and we see him outside while they're talking. The phone rings again, Linda picks up, and we get a shot from inside the rotary phone. So we're getting like phone vision, which is pretty amazing. And then we get a shot under the floor while Jennifer is sweeping, which is another, like, they're just like back-to-back POV shots where you're just like, this is so uncalled for and amazing.
It is, and it makes you feel like at times, even that opening shot in the cart, that you're a little kid in a grocery store.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the POV are from lower down perspective, so you're really immersed in it.
It's so true. She sees that he's written a note to her on one of the paper cards, and so I wanted to know, how common is graffiti or vandalism in a grocery store? Are people ever messing with your sales signs? Or
absolutely. They're, you know, in the bathrooms, of course, there's a lot more of that because it's out of sight, out of mind. But some of the best is actually like more kind of tomfoolery and jokes that the staff do to one another. In our meat department, you're able to program your scales to submit things like having a PLU code for horse meat, for instance, that prints out and gets slapped on things. Or I had worked at a location that was known as Seven Corners was its actual official name, but a scorned employee programmed the scale to say 7 boners. And every time there was a piece of meat printed out for at least 2 weeks, it said 7, the name of the company and 7 boners afterwards. Which, it's far better than any graffiti I read. I mean, the graffiti, most of it is, your run of the mill, late night, too much alcohol graffiti.
Thanks, Dave.
You need anything else?
Yeah, new job.
You and me both.
Dave helps Jennifer open some aspirin in the back, and he clearly wants to hang out with her. The boss comes back and says, "Dave, why don't you bring out all those baked beans and pineapple? I want to make a display." Does your boss make your displays?
Not really. But in a sense, what ends up happening is, as a grocery manager, you are given like a display grid of things that you have to execute within the store.
Gotcha.
And most of the time, the things make total sense, and you're like, yeah, sure. That pairing makes sense to me.
Yeah. Like Thanksgiving's approaching, so you gotta throw some ingredients up there.
Exactly. Or it's been a seasonal change, and you've got things that fit the season. But there have been some real head scratchers that are prescribed, and sometimes I have had to avoid them because I'm like, that's just too weird.
Right.
And other times I've gone after ideas that I'm definitely a tourist for even trying to launch the idea, like a Super Bowl display where I thought that jock guys liked Rotel dip a lot. So I built this tower of Rotel canned tomatoes and stacks of Velveeta, and made it to look like an Aztec sacrificial pyramid, because that seemed very like fertile and masculine to me.
Okay.
And it was a complete flop. Yeah.
What?
And no pun intended. Yeah, it just didn't work.
Oh my gosh, I can't. You just blew my mind, because if you ask me what guys who like football are into, I would probably say some sort of cheese dip.
Right. And built in a somewhat phallic pattern. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's either that or it has to be like something round with something tall and then something round on the other side. You get what I'm saying.
I get
Like
what you're saying.
something where they're like, I really like this. I don't know why. Yeah, displays. One of my favorite things in grocery stores is the cracker aisle, and the reason is on the boxes of crackers, they come up with the most ridiculous ways to knead their cracker. It'll be like bruschetta, where you have all the ingredients for bruschetta, but then you don't have bread, and so they're like, so
put it on a Ritz.
Yeah, put it on a Ritz. It's not going to get super wet and fall apart in a minute.
Exactly.
Like I love to look at those and be like, someone got paid money to do that.
Really make a stretch on that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I was his best friend for a while.
It's nothing to brag about.
Well, Craig used to be really quite cool, you know. I don't know why he went nuts. I figure it's because his old man died. That must have really freaked him out.
We get a weird scene with Craig while the two kids eat cookies in the aisle, and about how Craig would have killed this kid if his brother didn't save him by beating Craig with a blender. Now, this was the scene that he auditioned with to get the role. This was the script, and his name's Burr Steers. He's wonderfully odd in this film. He's the director of Igby Goes Down and Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and he acted in Pulp Fiction, so it's another weird link to the Tarantino film.
Yeah.
They have a break, and we see a root beer New York seltzer, which is awesome, which means it's time for us to take a break, so we'll be right back. Are you tired of boring food and condiments made of processed ingredients? Then you need Marshall's Hot Sauce. Each small batch is made by Sarah Marshall, who sources from local farmers. Her dedication to knowing the sources carries on through right down to knowing the single origin beekeeper and even the harvester of the sea salt. Each sauce is plant-based, gluten-free, and packed with deliciousness. Annual offerings from mild to spicy, being smoked habanero barbecue, red chili lime, serrano ginger lemongrass, and habanero carrot curry. Not to mention a rotating offering of limited edition sauces like Whiskey Smoked Ghost, Caramelized Scorpion Ghost, Volcano Sparkle, and even a collaboration with the Heatonist Bird's Eye Charred Chive Dulce. There's always something new and delicious. Just head on over to marshallshotsauce.com, that's Marshall's HAUTESAUCE.com. When checking out, enter VHUS in promo code for 20% off. That's VHUS at checkout for 20% off. And now, back to the show. We're back. We're still in the break room. The director knew this head story that we hear told by Bill in this scene.
His hamburger right with him. And the first thing we get to the scene there, the first thing we see is this headless corpse laying right in the middle of the road, and they can't find the guy's head.
Guy lost his head.
So Parker goes walking off down 9 Mile, looking for the head, still eating his goddamn hamburger. So everybody just gets through. They get themselves composed a little bit so they can do something constructive. They walk between the engine and the squad where the accident was, and they got off with putrescences laying there and everything. And here comes fucking Parker. Walking down 9 Mile, swinging the head by the hair in one hand and his hamburger in the other, and he's still eating it.
He told this story to Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi told the Coen brothers, and M. Emmett Walsh tells this same story in Raising Arizona. And that's the same story that's told in Intruder. That's so incredibly strange, and yet completely true. Do you have any break room stories? I imagine you have a break room in grocery stores.
We do. I'm trying to think of anything.
Community spaces can be tricky.
Yes. Trying to think.
Do you have lockers?
We have lockers. Oh, so as in many situations, small acts of defiance seem to be what make people feel okay with the mundane jobs they do. So our lockers are surrounding the eating area in the break room, and I've been asked to have very serious conversations with one of my staff members because she posts
oh no,
radically inappropriate material on her locker. And I think it's great. I think it's, I mean, only in this, I don't want anyone offended, but I think it's great that, like, someone's eating a day old free salad and they're looking at just these really inappropriate, awkward things that she posts on her locker. And as with most times when I have to have these conversations, they probably don't go as well as they should, because I inevitably find myself cracking up.
Yeah. I was really bad at my old job, which was at a school, because in the break room, people would leave all these passive aggressive notes. And I just wouldn't be able to help myself just to, like, either tag it a little bit or, correct something on it, something where then they would see it and then they post another note because they're already a crazy note poster that's like, whoever wrote on my note. And then you're like, well, here's another opportunity. You just see people spiral. I mean, it's just, it's a fun time.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of people approach me thinking that their food was stolen, and
yes,
it was. But the intensity at which they take that affront is at times, again, hard to keep a straight face.
There was a book that was given to us that was called "Who Moved My Cheese," and it's about, like, people freaking out over absolutely nothing. And if there was something with cheese left in the fridge, it got moved. And people would be like, who moved my, and I would just relish in I'm like, they're just saying it. It's the best time I've ever had. Missed that job. But lucky for them, the police arrive.
Had any more trouble with that guy since we've talked? Have we?
Well, he called a little while ago.
Well, did he make any threats or obscenities?
Nope.
They do a little check and they let us know that Craig's on parole now, so there's nothing they can do, which is not how laws work. But
nope.
you can't just be on parole and assault people and break into places. Linda goes to her car, and we get the feeling she isn't alone, and a silhouette and a knife. Cut to Ted and the watermelon. It's a very clever moment. We get a great shot of the bosses talking over the deed with the camera right behind one of those spiky things that people put paper on. I don't know what that's called.
Spiky things that people put paper on.
Yeah, they're writing on these pieces of paper and then they just slap it on this, like,
that comes up several times in the film.
Sure does.
Definitely not something that is used in a grocery store. There's a German deli that I frequent that uses one of those, and I can only wonder it's just to look extra German and hardcore, but yeah, it's not something that I encounter, but it's great for effect. Yeah,
right. At the back of the store, Bill watches a doorknob turn, and it turns the POV of the camera, so technically we're getting doorknob POV, and it's so amazing. It's like when that happens, I was like, there's no limit. There's really no limit to this. Outside he finds Craig, but Craig hits him with a hammer. We get heavy breathing POV, which is standard, slasher fare. One of the guys, Tim's pounding beer in the beer cooler. That's always been a dream of mine. Is that ever a problem that you've had to let people go for empty beers in the beer cooler?
You would think empty beers, but apparently I have far more sophisticated people working for me, and it was abandoned bottles of sake. And I actually had to spend an hour reviewing camera footage once to see how someone was stealthily drinking these tiny little cups of sake.
Oh, the 1 cups?
1 cups of sake. Yes, you're familiar.
Yeah, they're great for cooking. I mean, you don't have to buy a whole bottle.
And covert drinking on the job.
What a weird choice.
But that the scene in the beer cooler, it brings up one of my favorite things to do pre-COVID, which was so when you're stocking in our dairy cooler, we don't stock the beer, but when you're stocking in the dairy cooler, you're behind the scenes. You can kind of see that there's a person back there, but customers don't often notice it. But my favorite thing to do is to walk by and slowly insert my arm and just delicately stroke the hand of my coworker that's in the cooler. And obviously I don't do that now for safety reasons, but and we've talked about in the past that it's trying to recreate Aha's Take On Me music video, where we pull each other into some magical world where we're not at some boring grocery store. So
sure. Oh, I love that. One boss is choked in the office, that he reaches for the intercom. You get this feedback moment, this lush tension thing, and then that sharp thing we don't know the name of goes right in his eye, and he bleeds all over the light bulb, which changes the color in the room. It's a beautiful scene. I believe there's also kind of a similar thing happening in Evil Dead 2 with blood spraying on a light bulb. I could be
that sounds familiar to me, and it does. It creates amazing lighting.
Yeah. We get a shot of Jen, and we're seeing her from the bottom of a bucket of water, and her tears are hitting the water, creating ripples. This is pre-CG, people. She's literally crying. They're getting her to drop for it to fall off her face into a bucket of water. It's pretty amazing.
It really is.
It's very hard to manage. And you're a grocery manager. Are you in charge of who works in the different regions of the grocery? Or are you in charge of the groceries themselves? What is actually your job?
Yeah, my job has evolved to being where I'm in charge of conducting people more than it is actually doing. But with the space in which we find ourselves with labor budgets and modern capitalism, it's impossible for me to be completely hands-off. So I'm still doing all of the stuff that my crew's doing, but a lot of it is, the man behind the curtain.
Gotcha. And if there's like needs in the meat counter and someone's like, I'm vegan, I can't fill in there. Does that work or?
So no. So I'm not a store manager. So
okay,
I don't have to jump in there, and I also don't have to clean up the hazmat instances in the bathroom, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah. Okay, good. Ted takes a knife to the back of the head, which splits his headphones, and we get a shot of a knife safety sign right afterwards. Very sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I love this death. The door to the cold storage is ajar, and the beer guy investigates and gets stabbed in the gut, which goes through him and into the beer behind him, and it explodes blood and beer everywhere. It's a wonderful shot.
It is.
All the kills in this movie are so great, and really, once the movie gets going, it's just a juggernaut. It's just like bumping people off, boom, boom, boom. A lot of other films would like pause to play some slow music and have people have a 10-minute long scene. In this movie, they're like, nope, keep it rolling.
Right. But I think they balance the amount, the amount of kills in the film, where it's not just, it doesn't just blend together. It's not a zombie film where you're just seeing the same kill over and over again. Everything's creative. And there are enough little pauses between where there's still a tension that runs through it.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. It is like everything is very signature. Like we talked about with the shots, nothing feels accidental. And even though they might say that they were rushed, it all seems intentional. So it all seems to make sense.
Hey, who is that?
Someone's appears behind a hydraulic press, and there's a little game of cat and mouse before Burr gets his head squashed. Sam Raimi does meat inventory before getting a hook right through the jaw, which is a great sequence. We see a severed hand in the lobster tank. It's not really, I don't know why that happens, but it's a great image.
But it's hot. We also see a severed hand wrapped in a meat packing little styrofoam thing, which is also kind of glorious and unnecessary.
Yep, 7 boners. Guy sets off to find everyone, and he heads up to the attic, and there's just piles of monster masks, which for some reason aren't used in this movie. Like when they show those masks, I was like, okay, any normal slasher film, that would be used. Someone would have that on at one point, either a dead person or the killer. But they're just like, nope, they're just
Halloween backstock.
Yeah, just seasonal stuff up there. There's some Christmas stuff as well. He encounters Bob still alive up there, bleeding out of his eye for some reason. And then they see Craig is closing in on the gal up front, so they have to rush to try to catch her. Before he's attacked with a cleaver, he's dragged across the saw, and we get the best special effect in the film, in my opinion, and that is the bandsaw kill for the meat saw. The gelatinous head that they use is just really awful. It is, I mean, it's a beautiful effect, but it is...
Yeah, it's stomach churning.
Yeah.
I think the kill that for me is a little more significant is you had called it a hydraulic press, which
Oh, right.
you know, is definitely a grocery muggle term because
Yes.
so we call that the baler. So the baler is something we use every day, and that thing is used to smash our boxes down after we
Right.
break them down. And there is a feeling every time you use it of a similar feeling to when you're at the edge of a cliff face, and especially as a kid, where you contemplate like, what if I just jumped off? What would that feel
Right.
like? You get
Right.
those butterflies in your stomach. And every time you use this massive machine that you know could smash half of your body off or kill
Yeah.
someone, you get a little bit of a thrill and little bit of fear factor. So watching that scene for me of the you know, smashing the head in the baler,
Yeah.
is truly horrifying, and I don't have any tales of anyone doing such things, thank goodness.
God, I don't want that.
But it is something that, you know, sparks your fear a response and a kind of a little bit of glee every time you use it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the director on the commentary had worked at a grocery store. So when they found this location, which I believe was in LA, it was a closed grocery store. It had the baler, it had the bandsaw thing. I mean, it had all these things. He's like, no, this is exactly right. This is what we need, you know. And there's even a scene where I think it's Sam is butchering chickens or something using the saw, and the insert of the hands is, I believe, the director's, because he knew how to do it from working in grocery. And everyone was shocked. They were like, how'd you know how to do that? And he's like, you know, it's all these previous jobs, you know, you had, which is pretty amazing.
There's another thing that was kind of a nod to that, so only someone in grocery would do when Craig is chasing our final girl towards the end. There's he's running by the toilet paper, and there's a case of toilet paper that has fallen off the shelf.
Yeah. Yep.
He stops to face it.
Yes.
Facing. And that is something pathologic that happens to you when you work in a grocery store, where you actually end up, now when I go to liquor stores or really any place, I'm always bringing things forward and making sure that my lines are flat. And that had me in tears laughing that he took the time to stop and, you know, make sure that the toilet paper looked nice as he went.
It's because it's from the mindset of someone who is mentally scarred from having that job.
Right.
I have the same thing from working in clothes. Is if I'm looking at clothes, I'm constantly doing standards. I'm like, oh, your lines are off here, and like, this is the wrong side. Someone put this over here. Or I'll pick something up and I'll basically board fold it without a board and put it back on the stack, not even thinking about it.
Not even thinking about it. Wow.
It's just like what you do. You're just like, you know, because you've been punched in the head so many times with the idea of like, this is how it goes, you know. And from working in housewares, it's like it goes small, tall, because you want to keep it interesting to the eye, so they're drawn to all the different little. There we go. Oh boy. In the movie, things are constantly falling off the shelves. Is this common? Do you just find random stuff falling off the floor all the time?
Oh, absolutely. One of the other things you find is, so all of our tags are at the height level, or a lot of them, of very small children. And
there we go.
You know, Portland, Oregon is particularly known for its well, let's call it free range parenting.
Yes.
So there's a lot of times where you'll be in an aisle, you know, having worked really hard to get things looking nice, and then a child will come down the aisle and flip all of the tags off the entire aisle while the parent says nothing. And yeah, that definitely, you know, plays into some of watching this movie is about catharsis for me and for other people. And, you know, not that there's that instance in the movie, but there's you know, images of things of like, God, if we just could have revenge for one of these things, and you get to see it played out. So it actually, as someone in the field, it's a very cathartic film.
Yeah. Do you ever find weird things behind things?
Yes, definitely. Usually it's, you know, half-eaten food. Again, sometimes it's trying to figure out like, and probably thinking too much because the job's so boring that like, is this person trying to tell a story with this? Is the hot dog behind the diapers telling me something? Like, is there's some significance to that?
I'll be thinking about that one for sure.
We all will. Yeah.
Oh, well, Jen sets off to investigate, steps on an eyeball, and finds Raimi just hanging out. She hides in the meat locker where we see just standing severed legs, which is pretty amazing. She escapes by pulling Sam Raimi to hold the door, which is an amazing move as well.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's so good. She slides down the chute and we get some great gags where someone's cut in half and its sign says half off, or the person that got crushed, it says new crush proof boxes or something like that.
Yeah. And I think I love that because there's such grim kills in this film, but the comic relief moments keep it feeling like a movie a little earlier than it is. It's an 89 picture as far as I could tell. And some of the early 80s slashers really had this sense of humor that still wasn't self-aware. And that's what's nice is, when you get into the 90s, you have slashers that are so self-aware and breaking down the walls and really like playing that up. But early on you have this zaniness of doing that, and I think it goes over well in this.
Yeah, I agree. Suddenly it's lights out, but a car drives up, but it leaves before she can contact them. And in the car is Greg Nicotero, one of these special effects people, which is pretty cool. Behind her is Craig, who she catches with a meat hook in the neck. But has he checked out? Ominous bass sound. She's not alone. It's Bill. He's the real killer. There's our reveal.
You killed them. You killed all of them. But why?
Cue the killer explanation where he says, I'm just crazy about this store.
Don't you see? I'm just crazy about this store.
Yes, that's one of the best lines in the film. And this idea that he's so dedicated and that this is all he has. Now, that is somewhat disturbing, and well, more than somewhat, but I've encountered quite a few people in the industry who that is really true for, where their entire world, socially, artistically, anything of their universe is entirely based in these walls. So it was actually a somewhat believable moment, in a sense, of that this guy who had invested everything, and you never can trust the nice guy. And from the early scenes in the movie, he seems like the nicest person in the film.
Right.
You always know is a red flag that that's the killer.
Yep. He's murdered a lot of people. And while I don't advocate violence, we have touched on some things that are big offenses in the grocery store, like leaving a bunch of stuff at checkout, possibly leaving refrigerated items in non-refrigerated areas. What are the biggest ones, do you think, in your mind?
The biggest pet peeves? It more ends up being the difficulty of explaining. At least this is a personal thing for me. So I guess we've got we have senior discount day every Wednesday, which is a noble thing to do, and
absolutely
we do it. But
shout out to all of our elderly listeners.
Yeah, shout out to all of our elderly listeners. But if I had to live that long in this fucking world, I would be grumpy as hell too. And having to watch all of your favorite things disappear, and your loved ones die, you're going to be grumpy.
Why don't you carry Necco wafers?
Well, there we go. So this, what's so glorious about this is that the product that was so frequently requested on these Wednesdays that I finally had to contact our corporate office and have it brought in at one of the stores I worked at was Kreischmear wheat germ, which is a wheat germ that comes in a glass bottle. And our final girl actually uses it to smash it over his head.
Whoa, yeah.
And to me, that was so genius, because it's more these like, and at least in that instance, that product does still exist and I was able to find it for someone, but it's usually these really indignant people looking for products that then I'll, jump on the internet like some young whippersnapper would, and find out that the product hasn't existed in 40 years. Literally 40 years it's been not manufactured. So we've got some weirdo Rip Van Winkle shit going on. The people that have like completely like reemerged to come find this one unique product. And I'd say those are the moments that I become the most heated.
I prefer the story that they've just spent 40 years torturing people, just being like, I want this, and they know it's discontinued, but they're just like, that's what they do each day. Is they're like, I'm gonna go ruin someone's day.
Right. Another thing that bothers me that seems definitely unique to Portland is service animals that aren't service animals.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And dogs that nip and bark at you when you're on your knees trying to face some cans or face some toilet paper.
My wife
was just trying to face the toilet paper.
My wife has a food business. We're at the farmer's market, giant signs that say no dogs allowed. There's more dogs than people at that market.
Right.
And back when they used to tell people like, I'm sorry, but you can't have a dog, people would just pick their dog up as if the distance from the ground to their feet dictated whether it was a dog or not. And like, if you lift it high enough, it's like, it disappeared. I don't see it any longer. It's amazing. But yes, the service animals, that's true. What about the social aspect of the job? Because in customer service, you are dealing with people, and there are probably niceties at your profession where you say things like, are you finding everything okay? Or something where honestly, we're not supposed to reply. We should just say yes. But I'd imagine there are people who are like, well, here's an opportunity to overshare.
Yes. I think it happens a little bit more. My partner actually works in the wellness department, and it seems inevitable that when you ask those questions, it's always about a problem in their nether regions that they want to show you pictures of, or tell you in graphic detail. So there's a bit of that. I do get, a lot of the product we deal with is perishable. Is short, can within a few weeks be toxic to someone. And I have the same woman call every week and explain a different scenario of expired goods she has in her refrigerator and ask me if it's still safe for her to eat it. And I've had to explain so many times that I can't say that legally, nor would I ever. And my default is no, it's probably not.
we got one the other day about our website, and the person was like, I wanted to order sauce, but the bottle in the photo is about to expire. Like we had a photographer take those pictures 2 years ago. We don't photograph each bottle and be like, you want to buy this one? Is this the one you want to buy?
Not the bottle scene in the picture.
We have to put a disclaimer now that's like, won't be this one.
Right.
But it'll be very similar.
I guess one of the other wonderful high maintenance things I was asked to do recently is a customer who, it's also related to toilet paper shortages from that time in the pandemic. And they would call and ask not only that we would put toilet paper aside for them, but they would make sure that we quarantined it off the sales floor, because we keep our toilet paper, like every grocery store I've ever seen or worked in, near our cleaning products, because where else would you put it?
Right.
And she's convinced that she has no problem with the smell that's in the toilet paper, but her cats fucking hate it. Her cats have let her know that whatever smell is on here is not flying with them. They don't like it, and they've spoke up about it. So yeah.
I imagine her just sitting there and being like, the cat looks pretty mad. We're gonna have to get to the bottom of this.
Right.
And then eventually being like, I think it's the smell of the product that they don't use because they're cats. Like, they go in a box. It's not like the cat would even
right.
Wow,
maybe they feel they're being condescended to by our own human sophistication in these matters.
That's something I'll think about for sure. And when you talked about the wellness thing, my wife's business working in spices, you constantly just hear people talking about their butts all the time because they're just like, I'd eat it, but oh man. And you're like, I don't need to know anything about what you're saying right now. But because it's also next to someone that would be eating pre-pandemic.
Right.
And then we were next to one day an organic cranberry juice stand. And all she heard about was urinary tract
I
infections.
was just going to say UTIs.
That was it all
Yeah.
day. Not the amazing flavor or the freshness of the cranberry juice. It was just urethra talk all day. I was like, wow, okay, I guess I don't have it so bad. But Jen does, because she hides in a display, and we get these great shots as she's inside this display, and we see through the bottles, but she's got this nosebleed that's constantly happening.
Yes, and like the pinpoint pattern on the display. That display also has it says something like thrift store or thrift options. It's like celebrating how cheap a deal this is.
Yeah.
And it has these bizarre trash bag size bags of popcorn.
And Jiffy Pop, I think.
Yeah, Jiffy Pop. But the popcorn is really interesting to me because it's $3.
Yes.
And given the time this movie was made in 1989, that is not a savings at all.
No,
on like a shitty trash bag of popcorn. That's actually way overpriced.
Yeah.
And it's used creatively during, an attempted kill where he can't get the knife through that huge bag of $3 popcorn. So
yeah, maybe there's prizes inside. I don't know how they did it. Like maybe, you know how the grocery stores always have that like not a dollar bin, but a discount shelf where it's like weird vitamins and a bottle of shampoo and
dented cans.
Dented cans. Maybe they just throw those in the $3 popcorn and they're just like, it all comes together. It's like packing material. Well, her blood kind of trails out from underneath and he starts hacking up that popcorn, but she takes off and now she has 2 knives. We see the killer find towels in the aisle, like you mentioned, and then straightened it. The bakery guy shows up, but he's killed outside.
Danny? Danny?
Oh!
She hears a voice, but it's Bill, and he's talking with a severed head, and he does the crazy, brilliant story again. And then Craig has a crazy story, but the killer is 1 step ahead and beats him with a head. She gets to the car, but Bill's already there, and he gets stabbed in the chest. Interrupts her call that she's making in a phone booth, and well, Craig beats him, hacks him apart with a meat cleaver. The police arrive and we see Craig with the knife, so he gets arrested. It's Bruce Campbell and Lawrence Bender. About time they showed up.
Right. In the final scene of the film.
In the final scene. And then instantly Bruce goes in the store to check and find all the dead bodies, which we don't see him do. So then he's just off screen while Lawrence is there.
Yeah, so that I think is the number one reason this movie is a little forgotten. So when it came out, he was already someone worth hyping. It was already worth saying, Bruce Campbell's in this movie.
Yeah.
That was part of the draw for me of like, oh, I've liked some other things he's been in. He's always very funny.
Yep.
And they don't give him a chance to give any charismatic dialogue. No dad jokes. He's like the king of puns and dad jokes. There's nothing. He's there for a moment and disappears. And
no close up even.
No close up. And it reminds me a little bit of I'm a huge Christopher Lee fan. And a lot of Christopher Lee's work is him appearing for 10 seconds in a movie, or even weirder than that, appearing in a film and being completely silent and not delivering any lines because it costs less to not have him deliver lines. So some of these low-rent Dracula movies he was in, he didn't deliver a line of dialogue. And yeah, that creates a spooky atmosphere, but it's odd to have your main character advertised not say anything. And you kind of get that with Bruce Campbell in this. You're left wondering why even bother casting him?
Yeah. Except for that he's friends with all of the people involved and was the cameraman on the original one. But yeah, it's very odd to have to dive that deep into the history of the film to figure out like, oh, okay, I get it. But still, maybe don't put him as like top build. That's a little weird. But the killer isn't dead, and he says they did it, and they're getting arrested, and then that's the end of the film. Sadly, we never got Intruder 2.
We did not, and we could have, because as far as Final Girls go, she is awesome.
Yeah.
She does this, she's tough. she's cute as can be, but they don't like overemphasize the sexploitation vibe, which is really refreshing, especially for the time period that it's, we never see her nude, scantily clad. She's always kind of badass and not really a victim, even when things are happening to her. And the ways in which she's fending off these killers are creative and hysterical, you know? Very funny the way they do that.
No, it's great. It's not why she got the job, but she was the girlfriend to Lawrence Bender at the time when they filmed this. But she still got the role on her own merits. One of the things in the Synapse featurette is that she has her old, I think it's her old script or some sort of journal from that time, and there was 5 different screams, and they all have different names for which ones they were. So she would do like, and I just thought the level of detail for that is crazy. But she's like, she goes, I'm screaming through the whole thing, so there has to be some different screams, otherwise it's going to be awful. And you know, she breaks it down, and you're just like, wow, that is really thoughtful. And you don't notice as a viewer, but then once she points it out, you're like, oh great, now I know the 5 different screams that happen in a movie. And you could assign drinks so that when you're watching it, you could
have those. Right, exactly.
There you go.
Other attention to detail moments that really struck me. So when Craig is watching her at one point through the window, it does this close-up on a magazine cover with a picture of Sting. And that, for me, I've always been terrified of Sting and believed that every single one of Sting's songs was either about being a sexual predator or some sort of stalker. You know, it's like everything about him is just on the edge of creepy, and then his film appearances often have that tone too.
What was that big police song that was basically about stalking somebody?
Every Breath You Take.
Yes, that one. That's what I thought of instantly.
There's Don't Stand So Close to Me is also about,
that one I kind of feel like I don't want people standing close.
But it's more about having inappropriate urges to a younger woman.
Like
everything's creepy as hell with Sting. And working in a grocery store, you don't have control of the music much of the time. Actually, the place I work, you sometimes get to choose it. But one of the people that must have a lot of money invested in Pandora is Sting, because no matter what station you have it on, you'll have that Sting song playing, no matter what it is. It could be any station whatsoever, and that'll sneak back in. So seeing Sting on that magazine cover was like, oh my God, this is a horror movie.
I had a nervous breakdown, not nervous, but I almost died laughing because I don't keep up with pop culture. I don't know what's playing on the radio. I search out weird recordings, and that's what I like. But Sting and Shaggy did an album together. Yes, good. See, you're just like me. So I stumbled across this, and like Shaggy, I wouldn't put him in the same pedigree as somebody like Sting in like, I don't know, Hall of Fame kind of whatever. But they do apparently run in the same circles because they did an album. And when I saw them performing, I don't know when I saw it on YouTube or something, I was cry laughing. It is the most ridiculous thing to me. I know it's other people's thing, but my friend writes, he's on the Late Late Show with James Corden. He's like the head writer or whatever. So I was texting him because I'm like, I just saw something and you are not going to believe it. He's like, they were just on the show. And I was like, what?
You're like, stop normalizing this. This isn't normal.
To me, my brain was broken. Like, I didn't know what the universe was doing. I didn't know if we were all going to lose gravity and float off into space. Our time is done here. But no, it's that's just what people are into. But final thoughts. Do you have anything to conclude on Intruder?
Trying to think. Well, kind of why it wasn't a success. I think part of it, advertising Bruce Campbell so hard was something we talked about. But another thing was the timing and history of when it came out, because coming out in '89, it's already past that golden age of slashers, and it really plays like an earlier film. The kind of playful camaraderie of the characters, the fun and silly vibe, even though you're being shown some really horrific violence, doesn't feel right for the time period. And so many movies like that had been made. What I'm surprised is it was a pretty unique setting. I can't think of many slashers in a grocery store. I can't think of actually any other slashers in a grocery store. And maybe one of our listeners will, post 100 different ones.
Please do. Please do.
Because I'd love to watch them.
But I wish they could re-release it and call it Night Crew and have like some kind of grocery bag, like the cover is now, but like I think the Night Crew with the cheesy tagline would really kind of fit the film better, because Intruder just, it sounds like a home invasion film or something.
It does. It does. And maybe that's part of it too, that that didn't sell people what it was.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly. But that brings us to final questions. And these ones are just about you.
All right.
What's your favorite thing about being a grocery manager?
I'd say my favorite thing about being a grocery manager is getting to know eccentric vendors, such as yourself.
Hey,
getting to know the makers of some of these goods and hearing their stories, hearing how they came up with these products and how much they truly believe in their vision, even if it's completely absurd.
Right.
So, and it's a sense of being connected to the local food economy in a way that continues to be more and more meaningful, and having an opportunity to really put some money towards people that need it and champion things that matter. I think that's been really meaningful to me recently, because there's a lot of folks out there that really need the support, and there's a lot of unheard voices in food production that we've been trying to champion a bit more and find products that people aren't exposed to, and really throw some money and some interest into. So
that's great. And that makes a huge difference when people like yourself or people just stocking the shelves, and they're like, someone walks up and is like, I'm looking for this product, and someone being like, well, here's a great one, and it's made in the city. And then the person's like, oh, and then they're supporting that local economy that you're talking about. It's
exactly. It's meaningful. It makes it feel like a more sophisticated job than it is still. So that's always helpful.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's good for any job to find parts of it that mean something to you and focus on that, because otherwise we're focusing on what is considered like mundane for us, even though to others it's fascinating because they don't do it a million times a day or whatever,
And I think the one other thing that's I love is finding bad choice named products and having a good laugh over them. We had a line of cleaning products that arrived that were titled Aunt Fanny's, and my only thought was, the makers have never traveled to the UK.
Right.
So, finding those moments where you're like, oh, this is just so absurd, or
which is funny, because it's funny to me just the word fanny, but then
fanny's funny enough, but then think, for our friends across the pond, far funnier.
Yes, far funnier. What's a good day like for a grocery manager?
I'd say actually getting to be on the floor and seeing, having some interactions with our small vendors. There's a guy who makes tortillas that I've known now for 23 years. Wow. And seeing him still coming in and now having his grandchildren helping him deliver is awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's really amazing. And it gives some sense of hope when a lot of what we see is small producers fighting against these giant corporations that just absorb them.
Yeah.
So a good day
they do literally absorb them.
Right. Yes. So having those interactions, seeing my crew have a laugh that's truly authentic and have a happy moment or a moment of connection, is always fulfilling and exciting.
And I always like to touch briefly on mental health, self-care. So in jobs like yours, where you're dealing with the public, there can be many types of frustrations on top of just like what the job actually, the skills that actually are required in the job, how do you take care of yourself so you don't lose what last shred of sanity you have? Sure.
Well, scream therapy is one. And we're lucky enough to have walk-in coolers and freezers.
Yes. Just like in restaurants, I've heard.
Just like in restaurants, so you can always, have a good walk-in cooler, cry, scream, existential crisis. You have a soundproof space in which to really let it out. So that definitely helps.
Yeah. Do you in your off time, do you read or listen to experimental noise? Like what do you
Sure. Yeah. So I have many hobbies. I do collect VHS tapes, primarily horror and exploitation stuff, and a lot of the films I watch have a strong sense of catharsis, and it's sometimes like, even a film like this, like just being able to have a release after having to keep it so together during the day. So that I do listen to a bit of black metal, a bit of harsh noise at times, and I find that especially right when I get home, I need to throw on something pretty brutal. And at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this feeling when we weren't really recognized for what we were doing, but we were some of the only people going to work, that I started listening to martial industrial, because I was getting in this mind frame of, we're almost like a soldier-like mind frame, which sounds very bizarre. And I certainly mean no disrespect to people that are actually risking their life on front lines being soldiers. But there was, something about getting charged for the day with listening to, a timpani drum or a snare drum and feeling like, okay, we're going into the trenches of this bougie, privileged grocery store.
Yeah. Just saying, no, just two things of toilet paper per person. That's
right.
Any advice for somebody interested in grocery management?
Go back to school.
Okay.
No, I think it can be a really rewarding job. One of the harder things about it is, if you spend enough time on it and do a decent enough job, you will move up to a point of financial security. But most of the people you will manage are not in that space.
Yeah.
And if you have any, shred of empathy, that's one of the more challenging things about the job, is like working alongside people that at many times work harder than yourself and are brilliant, creative, awesome people, and you don't have really any control at that level over how they're compensated, and feeling like they deserve more. So I'd say, do some therapeutic work on how to deal with that if you're planning on approaching.
That's good.
Yeah.
And maybe train, like have a loved one, put a toilet plunger on your toilet with a condom on it.
Right.
Just surprise you and be like, you ready for this? Is this good? You good? All right.
Exactly. Yeah. See if you can handle it. Right.
And I just want to go back to that for a second. I think when you started telling that story, because of previous jobs, I'd known people who have worked with people who maybe had health issues and did similar things. I agreed to your situation way too quickly without anyone knowing that. And I just don't want anyone listening to be like, wow, Dirk really jumped into agreeing with the whole walking in to see that. Be like, sure. I mean, it's a Tuesday. So
you were into it.
I know. I don't want people worrying about me. I'm good.
Well, and myself involved too. I didn't really share that, like, how much I actually thought about, okay, what was the person actually doing? Was this a sex thing? Was this a drug smuggling thing?
Is it left as a shrine?
Was this performance art?
Right. Is Gigi Allen in the store?
Yeah, exactly.
Where are all the bananas?
I once had a close friend do this performance art piece where he had a woman's high heel on a stage in a spotlight, and then he crawled up to the high heel and then slowly and seductively inserted an entire pound of bacon inside of himself.
Wow.
And so I know that such kinds of performance art can exist, but this was definitely a private show if this was what the person was doing, and they only left behind the remnants. Yeah.
And to be clear, the bacon situation did not happen at your store.
It did not happen at my store. No, that that was many years before I got into the grocery. Maybe that drove me to the grocery industry. You never
The weird
know.
thing was, if you looked closely, the package of bacon said 7 boners. Callback for those listening to the. Okay. The last question is my favorite question. Jesse, what are your dreams like?
Yeah, it's fairly rare, thank goodness, to have them be taking place in the grocery
That's
aisle.
good. That's good.
But you know, you get the common, like, I showed up naked by mistake at work dreams, which I will tell you is a lot more dangerous when you've got a box cutter.
Right.
You know, so it's things of that sort. You know, your typical insecurities that would come up. But sometimes with like kind of insomnia and weird dreams like that, it's like, you know, for some people it's like having to solve a math problem. For me, it's sometimes having to build a really perfect display and having to have all of the labels faced just right on this display I've just built. And I wake up usually either laughing or crying, going like, wow, that's what's in my subconscious. All right. I've even, you know, had such things like that where I've had to have a meeting with my staff about something, and halfway through the meeting, I have to stop and go, don't you guys think it's funny that we're having a conversation about this? I can't think it's serious. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for revisiting Intruder and for recording this episode. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a joy to watch it again and to talk with you about it. It's very
Awesome.
fun.
I was really looking forward to it and did not disappoint in laughs. As always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and tune in next week when I'll be joined by a different person with a different profession to talk about a different. That's too wordy. I'm just working on these checking out situations. But thanks for listening.